Okay, now we proceed with the final segment on innate personality. I hope you found this interesting. I'd like to tie into actions you can take. If you don't do something at the end of these workshop sessions, you've wasted your time and ours. I think it's quite obvious that you're going to do best when you match your innate strength to context. My own career, when I had jobs that primarily required blue, I excelled, I moved up, I got promoted, I was happy. When I had jobs that primarily required orange, I just didn't do as well. I could do it, but not with the same joy. So if you're green, the things that you'll be easiest to do best at, excuse me, anything involving people and training, coaching, and leading complex teams. And I'm going to show you this caveat in every one. If you're 4D able, and I'll show you what that means momentarily. The yellows are good for marketing organizations, and they're also great team leaders because they're experts at relating to people. The largest, most complex teams that I know have been managed by yellows. Researchers, early phase projects for blues, late phase projects, things around process and certainty, oranges. So I'm going to show you a display convention. This is what we're going to show you is that the radius of an arc in our diagram increases with performance. So here's an okay blue performer, and there's a better blue performer. I want to introduce you to the idea of performance thresholds. This is a level below which performance is inadequate. Now, people often ask me to quantify this, and I can tell you this is the way to think about this. Others are the judge of this. They're going to decide. I can't tell you what's going to be adequate for you, except as others see you, and a great way to measure this is with the individual development assessment. Let's show a high-performance blue. They're in a job that matches their strength. They're coming up with these wonderful ideas, visions. People feel adequately valued by you, so they're going to follow your vision. They feel adequately included, and you're organized and accountable. A blue that's ineffective, and believe me, I've worked for some of them. They're overdone blue, overwhelming you with continuous ideas, changing all the time. They not only don't feel valued, they feel devalued. They not only don't feel included, they feel excluded. And they will see you as capricious and even neurotic. That's how you're going to appear to others. You can see here this is not a very good place to be. I want to show you some examples of people that used their innate strength to become very successful. Our Mother Teresa, despite some recent controversies with her basic caring for people, got a Nobel Peace Prize. U.S. President Jimmy Carter, I think most people would say he had a failed presidency because he wasn't orange enough. After his presidency, he built Habitat for Humanity. He also got a Nobel Peace Prize, a very successful man in the world today. Dwight Eisenhower, we've talked about him before. I believe he was one of America's great Republican presidents. And Bill Cosby is a guy that makes films and TV shows about families, and he's a very likable guy. Of course, these two icons of the computer industry, Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, blue, blue, blue. Bill Gates, about 15 years ago, made a speech, and he said, "I finally just got it. It's about the people." And Jack Welch, who led GE successfully for so many years with rules, be number one or number two. We saw his lack of green when he had a horrible divorce. And, of course, Margaret Thatcher cut social programs back and went orange on taxes and things in Britain. This is one of my very favorite slides. When I ask groups what % of managers are incompetent, I set this up first by explaining that I received a letter from a colleague at University of Colorado, not a letter, a research paper, which talked about the assumption that industrial psychologists make about the base rate of managerial incompetence in a business. So I go ahead and ask groups, what % of managers do you think are incompetent? And people throw out numbers, but it's really fascinating to me that commonly people will say numbers like 50, 70, 80%. The industrial psychologist number is 70%. Isn't this astounding? These are the people with all the power. Then I make a little joke particularly when I'm working with aerospace teams, that we're much, much better. I found a PhD thesis that stated that only half the managers in an aerospace firm are incompetent. So I wanted to understand this, so I asked myself, what is the nature of management? What is it that we name when we name management? Well, you all know this. This is plan, organize, direct, and control. What you probably don't know is this came from a study in France in 1850 around mining when they were still using horses. But this, when I recognized this, I felt really good about this, because most other authors about leadership will say management's a bad thing, you must transcend it to be an effective leader. I don't agree with that. That's not true at all, in my opinion. And the 4D system would say it's one of the 4 elements of being an effective leader. And I'll tell you right now, for most of you in the jobs you're in, if you can't do this, you're not going to be successful. It's very unlikely. So what are people saying when they say managers are incompetent? So when I had the great benefit of my first 7 or 8 years developing the 4D system, I worked a lot as a consultant in business. And I asked people, what do you think of when you talk about management that makes you think they're incompetent? And they said to me these things: I don't feel my management values my contributions. So what's that tell you to be the competent manager? You've got to learn to authentically appreciate others. They say, I don't feel included. I don't feel I belong here. I don't trust my management. So what you got to do is develop your yellow capabilities, include and keep your agreements. What about the blue? They say, my management denies reality and has no vision. Well, you need to be blue. Embrace reality and vision optimistic and realistic outcomes. They say, my management blames, complains, and ignores accountability. Well, then you've got to have no drama, and you've got to get clear about accountability. This is one of the places I like to stop and do a card check. This is such an important point. The takeaway here, I think, is really easy, but I want to reiterate it. Unless you become 4D able, you're not going to be placed in this 30% of people that people see as competent managers, much less leaders. So what's the takeaway here? You need to be 4D able, and what you need to do is find something where your strength matters, fill everything else in above threshold, and you'll succeed. This film clip's really great. This is actually about the moon landing. Gene Kranz was the flight director, and he talks about his inclusion, and you can see it in the film clip. And of course, he gives you a great clue when he starts off. He said he was the most emotional of the flight directors. He was clearly a yellow in his personality. I'll let you look at that clip. So when I set out to try and find the organizing system, one of the things I did was I looked at the leadership books, and they're all the same. They all have little stories about people who mostly you'd recognize. Then there's the 3 things, 4 things, 5 things that they tell you to do. And I tried to find some kind of coherence between those, and I didn't understand why it wasn't there, and now I do. Almost everybody writes from the perspective of their innate personality. So Stephen Covey, who was a minister with the Church of Latter-day Saints, writes about principles, and in his books that are published in the Mormon universe, they're much more about spiritual values. This guy wrote a very popular book about team. One of the first sentences says, nothing matters but teamwork. It's all teamwork, nothing else. This very popular book years ago, Tom Peters, it's a blue book. It's all about excellence. And we had a very blue head of NASA, and he made us all read the book. Of course, nothing ever came of reading the book, but that's how it goes. And then kind of a joke, the orange leadership secrets of Attila the Hun. So you have a great gift now, a great takeaway. While everyone else sees their personality's core as the path to success, you know that your success and everybody else's requires all 4 dimensions. What a great gift to understand that. So this is a part of our typical process. We're going to have people go to their workbook. They're going to think about these things. Then they're going to discuss it with their partners. Then we'll have a team out brief. And also I give a homework assignment on day 1 of workshops. It says, go tonight and teach your friend or spouse this basic material. And in your workbook, you've got an extra workbook sheet. You can have them do the test. And I think you'll have some very interesting conversations, especially if you're married to people across the diagonal. By the way, the most difficult one is the orange-green relationship because they're so vastly different. With the yellow-blue, at least one party knows how and cares about relationships, knows how to do it. That wraps up the personality segment. We'll have one of these last takeaway charts, give you a chance to ask questions, and then we'll move on to culture. Thanks for listening, and see you with the next piece soon.